Welcome to Celebration Church, Johannesburg's Victory Business Forum, where we have been on a journey to find out how to create wealth, looking at pathways of wealth creation. And I'm very excited today that as we continue on this journey, we are going to look on property development as a pathway to wealth creation. Many people hear about property development and they think it's for the mega billionaires or millionaires and so on, but they don't realize that there are different ways to start to get into this process. And you can make wealth by property development. So today I have my friends, Paul and Shamima Suta, who are going to walk us through. We're just going to discuss and converse. And we believe that as we have this discussion, God is going to help you. He's going to open your eyes to ways that you can create wealth through property development. So welcome, Paul, and welcome, Shami.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for having us.
I'm so excited. I really was looking forward to this day. And you guys are part of my heroes. And I was saying I can't wait to get them on the set and be able to hear from them. So before we just get in, shall we just open in prayer? Father, we thank you today as we confess you are the God of Abraham, the God who says, I am Jehovah Jireh, I'm the Lord, your provider, I'm the Lord who make a way in the wilderness. So we pray right now that you lead us, you guide us in this recording, you guide us as you minister to your people, as we speak, as we converse, Father, may you open our eyes because you are the Lord who causeth us to prosper. You are the Lord who gives us the ability to create wealth. So we pray for your leading and your guidance. Father, we pray that you may minister to people through this recording and this broadcast. Father, may it minister to your people. May it encourage and inspire someone in the name of Jesus. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
So guys, talk to me. How did you start on this journey?
I think you speak.
Yeah, so we are not your traditional conventional type of property developers. Paul was in IT and I was in accounting. So we came into Johannesburg and lived in a freestanding house. And we had an incident of a robbery where our vehicle was stolen overnight. The gate was left wide open. And that got us really shaken and got us on a journey to look for property. And prior to that same house, I kept describing to the estate agent that I wanted a house that had a lot of light. And for the budget that I had, she couldn't find anything. So we looked for a very long time. And eventually one day she says to me, listen, there's a house outside of your price range that I want you to look at. So you can explain to me and show me what you mean by you want lots of light. So she took me to a house. I walked in within 2 seconds. I was like, yes, definitely, this is what I'm looking for. And it was outside our price range. And we tried to negotiate with my husband. I really wanted the house, but we had a set budget. And the agent then says to me, you seem to be really sold on this house. Do you know that I found some information? This house is actually going under sequestration. There's some legal issues going with the buyer, and the house, I think at the time, was going for, I don't know, 475,000 Rand. And our budget was 330.
Sorry, Shami. Sorry to interrupt. I think just to help some viewers like me who may not know what sequestration is, can you just, okay. You said this house was under sequestration. Okay. Help us by just defining that.
Yeah, so the owner at the time was in trouble with the bank. They had not been able to pay, and they were basically being, the bank was taking back the house.
It was being repossessed.
All the bank was interested in was to recover what was owed, despite what the market value of that property was. Mm-hmm. So at the time, they had this property for about 7-8 years and had been paying back their bond. But the bank was not really worried about that. They just wanted to recover the money, and they were not worried about what the market price would have been. So what the estate agent was basically telling me was the value of the house may be much more, but all the bank wants to recover is what is due to them. and the seller had no say in the matter at this point. So I was, oh, okay, that's interesting. So Paul and I had a discussion about it, and the house was on the market for about 475,000, which was outside our price range. This was about 25 years ago. And I said, well, if we put in the offer of what we are budgeting as our maximum, what do you think would happen? And she says, well, the bank is not interested in the selling of property. They just want to recover their money. So put in whatever offer you so feel, and let's see how it goes. So we put in our offer, and it was accepted at the price, which was a lot less what the market was going for. So that was, I think, our first kind of whetting of the appetite to say, oh, it's not always what the buyer wants. There is another pricing that is also available. And we entered into our first property investment in South Africa. We had property in Zim, but it was a different ball game altogether. So our offer was accepted, actually not even at 330 at the time, it was accepted at 275.
Wow.
So we're like, wow, this is the best news possible. And this was a beautiful house and a big yard, great location. So fast forward for about 3 years later, our vehicle was stolen overnight, and we felt really, really unsafe. And Paul was working late evenings back then, and I wasn't going to be in this house on my own. So we needed then to move into something more secure. And again, because we'd had a bit of an experience that you can get bargains out there, it took us a bit longer to find, but we got into a secure estate and found a property that, again, was slightly above what we wanted, and it was not yet complete.
Sorry, Shami, to interrupt you. I think you moved too quickly past something that's critical for somebody who is going into the property market. You did talk about, we knew there were bargains out there. For the benefit of our viewers, explain that a little bit. I know, for example, you got a bargain in the case of that other property, to say you realize it's going for this, the market value, but you also then realize that because it was under sequestration, so it was a different price, and you needed to know that. So that's what bargains are. So you may have a desperate seller who needs to offload. So I think just if you can just underscore that and say a little bit more about the kinds of bargains that people can find on the market.
So basically, if I can jump in here, Doc, people sell properties and assets for different reasons. Life happens, and sometimes there are pressures that are basically unsummable for people, and they end up selling for either financial reasons, personal reasons, divorce, and all sorts of reasons. Now, in these situations, people are very vulnerable, and especially in divorce, they may be in a hurry to get out of the marriage. So you find that you put in an offer. The worst that could happen with an offer in a buying scenario is they'll turn back and say, no, we do not accept the offer. Or they will come in and counter that offer. So you offer maybe 2 million, and they'll come and say, okay, we'll counter offer at 2,100,000, or they decline the offer. So that's basically what the worst that could happen in a bargaining. It's a bargaining scenario where you are not basically at anyone's mercy. Don't be too desperate. This is the thing now with property. Don't be too desperate when you put the offer. At the worst, they'll come back within 48 hours and say no, and you can then obviously up and negotiate from there on.
So I think that's powerful. That's an important thing to say. Number one, don't be desperate. Number two, if you want a bargain, you need to be patient. You don't get bargains just on a platter. You need to be patient, to be on the lookout. But you also need to know where to look. Where do you find the bargains? Yeah. You also need to be able to engage the agent who is selling, and know why it's being sold and how long it has been in market. Sometimes in engaging in that kind of conversation, you get to know whether it's a bargain or whether it's not a bargain. So it's important to be able to engage. Yeah. Okay. No, go ahead. Sorry, we had interrupted you, Shami. We thought there was something that we wanted to
No,
that could
that's
help
fine.
us
So
as we dig in.
yeah, so I think that was, yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that was a lesson for us as well. We came into the market not knowing that you can negotiate, and that was a first intro and an inkling to say it's not always what a buyer wants, what the buyer gets, and we had inside information, we were able to move forward. So our next uh, purchase at the time was a half-built house where we put in an offer. It wasn't yet complete. Again, that's another type of property that you can get. And we were willing to wait for it to be completed. And during that time, we learned a lot from understanding when you purchase, when a developer says, I will do carpeting for you for X price, and you spend enough time at the property or to understand that, oh, wow, they're actually putting in really bigger margins. When we looked at what we had purchased and what was actually being put in terms of finishes. So I think.
So if I can jump in here, basically,
Yes, sure. Jump in, Paul. Go ahead.
yeah. So basically, at this point, that's where we actually got to learn the property development space. Yeah, the first one we were buyers. So getting into this purchase, it was a shell, and the shell then came with what they call a PC amounts for all the various things that were left to be finished, i.e. the swimming pool, the kitchen. So in there, they will write down a price per each one of these line items to the completion of the house. So we then had those PC amounts to work with. And we now had to go shop around to find what we could afford in our PC amounts. Obviously, this was approved by the bank in terms of the mortgage, but the PC amounts you can top up. So if they gave you for tiling maybe 100 Rand a square meter, and you want to buy for 120 square meter, you top up the 20 Rand. So in this exercise, we got to actually understand the subcontractors, the specialists on site, the tiling, for example. So you get to speak with the guys and understand how much they are being paid and all of that. So we took an interest from that point, from that exercise, to say, wow, there's actually there's a lot of fat in this process. And we picked that up and we flagged that to say, wow, there's an opportunity here. So while we were there, we then started looking around. The appetite actually grew to something else. We then moved into the house after finishing the process. We then said, we're going to do one for ourselves from ground up. And the same agent, obviously.
Hold on. So, Paul, you are saying that you just working together with the developer, you realized how much the developer was charging, how much the subcontractors were paying, how much the suppliers were paying, and you realized the fat. And then in that experience for you, open the doorway, you say, here is an opportunity. In other words, you were opportunity minded and you saw the opportunity and you said, we go for it.
100%.
Wow.
So what we then did is we then spoke with the same agent who was obviously very keen to sell, and we asked for land, but this time we had learned the issue of location. So coming to South Africa, I will say we're in Douglasdale, which is not a bad area, but at that point, Douglasdale was very popular. So there were a lot of movements and things were happening in Douglasdale. That's where we had that incident. We were just unlucky. I think we just got unlucky. Yeah. And jittery coming from Zimbabwe, we're like, whoa, we're not going to take a chance. Anyway, moving into this gated estate, we then said to the estate agent, we want to do a property, but in the right location. And that's where another journey started, the location discussion. So having had a bad experience in Douglasdale, I'll say that, we then started trying to understand the Joburg landscape in terms of which is the good location.
Sorry, Paul, you break my heart. I live in Douglasdale, and you keep to be you seem to be rubbing it in.
Doc.
I think it's in.
It was a freestanding house.
It's intentional on Paul. No, it's intentional on Paul.
The issue, I don't think Douglasdale was a bad location in itself.
It's not.
We were in a freestanding house close to the highway. And those are the lessons we learned from a property point of view. You don't then go and invest number one, in a freestanding area close to the highway, because when they're hijacking, security issues, the guys can get away quickly. So we already knew from that experience, within a particular suburb, maybe going freestanding, you may get cheaper land, but there's a price to pay for security. So there was a lesson to be learned from that experience. And
thank you. We are also learning the lesson. Thank you.
Yes. So the house that my wife fell in love with ticked all the boxes in terms of openness and the yard, but it didn't tick the other boxes in terms of security. So the conversation from there on, we started to look at that particular house in terms of the location where it was within Douglasdale. I'll repeat, Douglasdale was a lovely area. I would live in there again tomorrow. But moving forward, so we then we started to understand, to learn the landscape of Johannesburg, landscape in terms of property. And we honed in a particular area where it was gated, it was safe, and the agents can basically sell you what they want. But what we also learned at the time is it's important to speak to numerous agents and get different views from different agents, because they all have a different agenda. You're talking to a Toyota dealership versus a Hyundai and a Mercedes-Benz. They all have something to say about their product. So we then got into discussions with numerous agents, and we came to a conclusion. We had to be in a gated community, where our location was to be. So we identified the land again in a gated community, not far from where we were. And we bought the land, but we didn't know anything about construction. So another conversation started in terms of trying to understand the space. So we went back to some of the contractors would finish the house. We managed to get some of those, and we got insights in terms of the right resources to help us build our new project. There was a whole new learning on this now in terms of getting this house built.
And I think, hold on right there, Paul. I think the one of the key things we are talking about here is that many people understand that we're talking about wealth creation. But in wealth creation, you need to be somebody who is always learning. You need to be somebody who needs to invest in understanding. You don't just hear that, oh, people are saying there's money is being made in proper development. Then you say, I'll just go. You need to research. If you listen to Paul and Shami, they're saying we are inquisitive. We ask questions. We learn. We are not just going in. We try to diversify our sources of information so that we are well informed in terms of what we are doing. So they went in and they created also one of the things we teach in Celebration Church is that you don't be transactional, be relational. So the fact that they could go to previous developers or contractors who worked with them, it means they created relationships. And it's important to do that. So don't just see the person you are working with, a workman who is doing something, as somebody who is transactional, who just goes, but by creating those relationships, they became sources of information, sources of knowledge. So it's important to be knowledgeable. It's important to be relational so that you can mine those relational networks for your advantage. I just wanted to tag that in. You can go ahead, Paul.
Sure. So the learnings on that one, at that time, the mortgage system was very favorable. They were not as strict as they are now, I must say that. So we managed to tap into, at that point, you could get as much as you want. Well, I won't say as much, but it was quite favorable for banks. Banks were quite favorable in terms of people looking for mortgages. So we managed to then get a mortgage for the piece of ground as well as for the build. Now that experience, this house we're sitting in now is the house we built the first one. We've come back to it now. It's still standing. So it wasn't a bad experience with the first contractors. While we're here in this house, we then looked for tenants, obviously the rental space. We then got into the rental space. This was quite attractive at the time because at that time it was mostly expats who were coming in. And these guys would want gated, safe, and there was an appetite for these type of properties. And so we managed to let the property out, and we stayed at the other house. Then the bug hit even further. We said, okay, let's go for a third one. We had a stand next door where we'd done that one. We went in and we started another project there. So we did that project, and there the bug was already, we were sold.
It was a sacrifice.
It was a sacrifice.
We had to sacrifice our quality of life as we understood it. So we went backwards. We actually went back into a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment in order to free up some of our income because we're working. We had the rental income. And when we approached the bank to assist us with the third one, they said, oh, we can only do so much. So we now needed to come back to the bank and say, what are we willing to do to free up some of our income for them to be able to fund us? So our first property we finished off from the developer was available for rent. We had moved into our house. I was very happy, but I couldn't then say to Paul, listen, we still want to go ahead with this one, but I want to keep my house. So as you know, I loved my house. I had to give up something.
Yeah.
So we went back into a smaller unit, 3-bed, very small, and start again so that we could free up our income to go into another third mortgage.
Yeah. So the learning we got at that point, Doc, was location's very key, right? Location's almost, it's a rule 101 for property.
Yeah.
You could have, because the cost of building a house is the same in a township versus in an expensive place. And there's nothing wrong with a township at all, but I'm just saying in terms of location.
Yeah.
But you're spending the same amount dollar for dollar. So, but the price you'll get for the house, obviously in the better location, will be a lot more. We then also learned at that point that property is good, but do not fall in love with property. Keep the soft, fluffy feelings to the family, the wife, and everything else. So we took a tough decision. It was very uncomfortable for us to move into a smaller place, but it was probably one of the better decisions we ever made to move into a smaller place. At that point, we then managed to build the third property, and then trouble struck.
So before we get into the trouble, I think let's just mine a principle you have just shared. I think both of you have shared a principle right there. I think the actually two principles that I see. Number one, I see the principle that says, you know what, as a matter of fact, an investment vehicle is simply a vehicle. It's not my destination. So if I am emotionally attached to the vehicle, I lose sight of the destination.
Correct.
It's like somebody saying, look, I enjoyed the flight to Cape Town, so I don't want to leave the plane. You won't get to Cape Town. So the vehicle, the property you bought was simply a vehicle. It takes you to where you want to go. So you are not emotionally attached. You could make a decision to say, you know what, our identity, our social status is not linked to where we stay. So if if we can make a sacrifice, a trade-off to say we can sweat this asset to take us where we want to go, you need to do that. And many people don't understand that they even when they do property, they are so stuck. They build a property that suits what they want, and they think everybody else will want what they want. So I think that is a critical principle. The second principle that I see is a principle of saying, you know what, I am willing to delay my gratification.
Correct.
I keep in mind where I'm going. And I'm saying I'm going to pursue it, and I will do whatever is necessary, if that is legitimate, that is moral, that is right, to get me where I'm going. So I'm willing to treat the property development as a business. And as a business, I'm going to make decisions to say, at this point, I can take something out of it. It's at this point, I'm going to have to go lean so that I achieve what I want to achieve. And I think those are critical principles that I seem to hear from what you are saying.
Yes. So I'm going to share another principle that we subsequently learned from that. I come from a running background, and so in running we talk run your pace to enjoy your race, right? So basically, it's about pacing yourself. I think we got a bit overambitious at that point, because what then happened was 2008. We had a storm. That was the global meltdown. So at global meltdown, and at that point now, we had 3 top-end, very top-end homes. And we couldn't afford at that point not to have a tenant in any one of them. If we did, we would be in trouble. And God forbid it happened. One of our tenants at that point said, my contract's been terminated. I now have to go back to wherever they came from. I think they were from somewhere overseas, Switzerland. And Doc, we had a very top-end house that needed to be mortgaged, needed a mortgage every month. and our cash flow was very compromised. So we got into serious trouble there. And because of that, we ended up putting the house on the market. And again, back to our first one. What comes around goes around. So we ended up selling a house at not a giveaway price, but we could have gotten a lot more for it than we got for that house. Because at that point now we were on the back.
You are now distressed sellers.
We're now distressed sellers. And that's what happens with everybody. So that goes back to that same principle we started with, that always put in your offer, you'll be amazed what you get from it. Yeah. So we had to let go of that house. It was a beautiful home, but we had to let it go. We lost quite a bit on there, but it was a tough lesson. So we sold that house and we regrouped. You want to take over from there?
Yeah. Okay. So what then?
Before you regroup, I think let's again underline what you're saying. You see, one of the key things in property, whether it's property development or even the rent of space, is to always make sure that you have sufficient cushion to say, in terms of my mortgage repayments, do I have, you have to estimate to say what happens if I have a vacancy or I don't have tenants occupancy for 2 months in a year or 3 months in a year. Do I have sufficient cushion from my other sources? Because I think it's important. I think what Paul was talking about, to say, pace yourself and run it. What did you say? Pace yourself
and enjoy your race.
Enjoy your race. Yeah. So sometimes we become desperate. We say, you know what, I acquired this property, but our margins are so thin that if anything just destabilizes, you are in trouble. So be patient and run the race at your pace without feeling the pressure either from competing with somebody else or in putting yourself in unnecessary due pressure. I think that's what they're talking about. And I think you can underscore and go ahead, sir.
Yes. So basically now that came with, obviously, the wife is now pointing at you. It was your idea. So that comes with its own baggage. So we got over that. And then we had to regroup. So we started now looking at the smaller apartments. We looked at smaller apartments to better manage that for the future. So the appetite, they moved from the top-end homes to small apartments. But while we're there, we also then looked at banking land, right, for future projects.
Sorry, Paul, there are two things you are saying right there, and I don't want to miss them. I think let's park the banking land, and you want to come back to it. I think you give us the rationale. I think there's a principle that you just kind of skimmed over. Right. The rationale between the experience you had with that top-end property and the difficulty in getting the tenant, and now moving into the smaller end. I think there's a principle there that you kind of skimmed over. Talk to us a little bit more.
Sure. So basically, this was to spread our risk in terms of the, not putting all your eggs in one basket. Also to, at the lower end, you'll find you'll have more people attracted to a 5,000 rental home than you would for a 40,000 rand home. So there's a bigger market for that space than there is for the top end. Also, if you have those ones, if one tenant moves out, you can sort of limp and manage your way through, as opposed to the one big elephant does not have a tenant, it's going to break you. So the idea is to spread the risk and actually have numerous of these smaller ones to save you, not to sink you. And so to avoid this disaster we almost had, we had to now take a step back and regroup. So come 2008, again, there was it was a buyer's market soon after that. And the important thing here is, I must say this, Doc, the property space is it's a money, you need to have money for this. You need to be able to back it up. It's so easy to come up with grand ideas and all of that, but you need to be able to back it up. So at that point, our insurance was our employment. It was our jobs. That's what we banked on. So we basically used our paychecks to make sure whatever we could get into would carry us. So that managed to work in terms of getting into the smaller apartments. And then the bug to build, I talked of banking land. banking land with bank land. So banking land is you again looking in the right areas. This is not the developer now, not the property investor. The developer kicked in, the bug was there. So we had bank land. We look for land to bank. You buy it and you park it, waiting for things to turn, or you start the process in the background. So the whole idea of banking land is you're basically looking again for distress. This is actually a much exciting space because you're getting the land at a lower price. You're looking for distressed sellers in the right location. Have an appetite to drive out, look, talk to agents. You will find land in some instances or an ugly duckling, right? An ugly home that is in the perfect location. There we talk the concept or principle of flipping a home, where you buy an ugly one and you fix it up to move on. But basically, our stage at that time was to find land which we banked. In the background, we started the process because we learned the experience now. You need to have very competent architects. An architect can make or break your house easily. So you need to have a house that is fresh, that is all the things that the ladies want. The kitchen, the bathroom, all those things must be there, lots of light. And it's very difficult to find the right architect. So what we found is we started driving around looking at developments. And the ones we liked, we started making relationships with those architects who'd done those houses. And we have relationships with those now. So that helped us to build a good pool of architects who we know. We can give them a small piece of land and they can make a gem out of it. So we then moved into an area called Broad Acres. There were very small stands there, about 300 square meters. But with the right architects, we managed to do very good developments there. I think we did, how many? 4?
5.
We did 5. We managed to do five developments in a very closed, small space. But the architect was the key thing. And the experience now from our subbies, our contractors, helped us to prop us. The quality was good. So we rode that wave and still at corporate. So we can call this a side hustle. It was a side hustle because the corporate was the bank rolling all of this where we needed to, we would chip in.
Yeah.
So basically we then rode that wave of development and we got to enjoy it.
I think let me just kick in. I think there's you did talk about banking land. There are so many directions. You guys, you are so multifaceted that you are throwing so many things very casually. You know, I think in terms of banking land, there are so many things that you can do. One is you can bank land in terms of just buying the land, waiting for it to appreciate, and then you can dispose. You can bank land and say, I want to develop it later on, particularly when you have identified that this is where the market is going and that land is going to appreciate in value. Or you can bank land in terms of saying, I buy land. Once I have bought that land, it may need rezoning, it may need servicing, and then you sell at that stage. So there are different things that you can do in terms of land that you are banking. That again is a whole aspect to it. And I think you may want to talk a little bit about that before you move on to Broad Acres again.
Right. So banking land is a principle where, like you said, Doc, you are basically buying land with an end goal in mind. This could be to either develop it yourself, or to if you look at another option where it's a bigger piece of land, to subdivide it and then sell part of that and build some of that. That's our focus in terms of our property development at this stage. That's what we do. We're focusing on. So we basically look at the old ugly ducklings in a good estate, in a good area. Yeah. So our playground right now, our place we're basically working in is Bryanston. So we found that there is a lot of big yards with very old homes. And again, before COVID, I'm going to fast track box, Doc. Before COVID, we again were on the market for another one of these desperate ones. And we managed to get another one who was desperate. It was an old house, which you could refurbish, but the yard was good. So that we looked at an option in terms of subdividing that to then build cluster developments. So that's a space we found to be a sweet spot. And so we basically go through that. You go through the planning, rezoning, engineering in terms of servicing the ground, and then you break ground to either build or to sell some of the stands. So that's another option or another variant of banking land. It would come out a bit more expensive because you're buying it at a premium. With the end, when you do sell, you're actually maximizing because you're when you subdivide, you're selling at a premium as well. But the cost of acquisition may not be at a nominal a price because it's in a top end area, and he's asking for
A house. He's selling a house.
he's
He's not
selling a
selling
house.
land.
He's not selling land. Yeah. So exactly that's what you're looking at. But the rewards on that are quite good because you will score either by selling the land, like I said, or um, building on there.
It takes time.
It takes time. So there's a holding cost that is very, very painful there. Again, pacing yourself on there again. So that process of subdivision takes 18 months, 12 to 18 months. And so that's quite a long process. Now, you can either put a tenant in that house to rent it out. That's an option. To service your mortgage. Those are the options you look at.
We kind of went So Broadcast was a developer who already had stands available, smaller, so we could spread our risk. So we went in there. I think we did about a development of 5 units, and we're able to sell them over time. And that was a quicker turnaround to dispose of those properties, unlike with the bigger units. So that got us having traction to do a lot more and quicker. So that was a much a different model, and it helped our cash flow. We had projects going all the time. And it's about the same time that I then left corporate to focus on that business. And after that, we continued. We've done quite a lot of projects and learnings with each one of those developments. So with time, I think, as Paul is saying, we've done a few more in between until we got to a stage now where we've actually purchased a freestanding home with an aim of subdividing. I think we're 18 months into the development of subdivision phase and rezoning phase for that land. That really is the journey that we've walked and the fees that we've paid over time. And 18 months in, it's a slow process, it's a costly process, but I think that is basically the journey where we've been heading over the past couple of years, where we're able to fully develop our own and sell as we please, or to actually build homes.
Excellent. I think that's beautiful. I've had my wife and I have had an experience in Zimbabwe, for example, where we bought together with a certain brother. We bought a piece of what you're talking about in terms of I call them diamonds in the dirt, or I think Paul calls them the ugly duckling. So it was around Newlands in Borodale. I think there was these properties which are right smack in the center, and then you had about 10,000 square meters of land. So we bought that kind of property, and we turned it into 22 cluster homes in that area. So I think that's the kind of thing we are talking about. Say you actually can see value, and you maximize that value by working around that. So I think, having heard you, I want you to, we think we are getting closer towards the end. I want you to talk about, I don't know who will start first, talk about the key learnings. I think we have summarized some of them. Talk about potential pitfalls, what people should watch out for. Talk about how to spot opportunities, and some key principles that can help people. So you can take turns to shoot at it.
I will talk about spotting the opportunities. She is a better critic. She'll talk about the pitfalls. So basically, the property space needs a lot of passion. You have to be very passionate about it. Sometimes I go to a building site. I've been building for many years. I'll stand there and watch them build, and I will find possible contractors there. I will find possible tilers. It's always a learning space because it's always evolving. So you've got to be very passionate about property if you are into there. That's a development space. So the drive arounds are very important. The conversations with estate agents are also very important to understand the landscape. Drive arounds are good to actually make you see and better see the surrounding areas, the activities on a Sunday, what's the market saying. Walk in there, ask the questions. They will always tell you, they can guide you. It also helps to get to know where the winds are coming from. So there's some areas where you will have they call it the urban decay coming in. There's a couple of areas that you find 10 years ago they were very good areas, but now they are not so good. So these drive arounds are very good to get a better feel of what the areas are in terms of your locations. It's different from a desk exercise where you go to property 24 and you do the lazy way out. So that's very important. I emphasize the drive arounds are important. You've got to be very passionate about it. To drive there and speak to the guys. Whoa, who's doing the tiling? Check the tiling out. Whoa, who's doing the bricklaying? And see how they're doing it. You build a pool of subbies, we call them. That will help you for your projects going forward. Also, finding the ugly ducklings, finding the land to bank, it all comes from driving around. So for me, that's the takeaway. You have to be very involved. You have to be passionate about it. You have to have the energy to drive around and the heat to see and understand the market.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Shami, go ahead. What are you going to take?
I think the key learnings from this, as Paul is saying, is there's no other way of doing property but being involved in it every day. The trends change, the designs of the homes change. There's fashion in and out, things are in and out of season continuously. So if you're going to be half-hearted about it and not be fully invested, you will lose money. And what we've also found that budgeting is everything in a project. Mm-hmm. If you are saying you're going in to buy, stick as much as possible to your budget, because your return is basically based on whatever spend you will have, whether you're doing a renovation, whether it's a new build. You have to know what your budget is. And if you're renovating, stick to that budget. Because at the end of the day, that is what determines your resale. There's a maximum that you can sell your particular property. And people don't pay premium because you bought an expensive piece of land. They pay premium because it's the right price for that particular area. So you cannot go and overinvest because you think you'll make money out. Find out what the latest prices have been in that particular area and work with that, because that is the information that the buyers are also looking at. So you cannot expect to make an extra million because you put an extra million. That is basically money that's gone down the drain. So budgeting is everything. And in the same way that your budget works in terms of money, your time to market is everything. So if you're doing a renovation, try to get it over and done with as quickly as possible and go back into the market if you're flipping, because that's where the money is. The longer you wait, the more money you will spend. The same thing with a new build. The more money you spend on rates and your levies and so on, that money is gone. It's a sunk cost. It will never come back. So you want to be as quick to the market, build and offload and flip as quickly as possible. So there's also other things that I think, coming from a finance point of view, that you can invest in your first property. There's some tax benefits that you can claim if you're going into a second property. There are things that if once you get into a property, you need to be as transparent with the taxman as possible, because they will come after you. And when they do, you can't say, well, I've already spent the money and bought myself a new car. They want their money. So you've got to be, from a statutory point of view, you've got to be as clear as possible from the beginning. When you are moving into your second property, what does that mean when you are selling from a tax point of view? And have smart ways of managing those tax liabilities. So at the end of the day, you are not creating wealth on paper, but creating a liability for yourself with the taxman. Because when the taxman comes, he comes hard. So you've got to make sure that you are as clean as possible. Make sure whatever profit you're reporting, you're accounting for everything, because it does matter at the end of the day.
And from a man's point of view, Doc, from the father and being the priest, head priest of the home, whatever we do in property space is to save your family, not sink your family. That's very important. Sometimes, like I said, run your pace to enjoy your race. You don't want to do things out of ego. You don't want to do things for the wrong reasons, because whatever you're doing in property must save your family, not sink your family. Because that day will come. COVID came, nobody could have dreamt COVID was coming. And believe you me, there's a lot of, we've lost properties because of COVID. We've had to let go of properties because of COVID. So the reality is you need to be able to carry that in you know, when the times are not so good, and it will come. Yeah. And then the other model that I've seen some very savvy, prudent developers do. So with the idea of banking land, they will actually go and move into that house. My wife's got standards. She wouldn't move into the house on the other side, but they would move into that house and stay there whilst the subdivision's happening. So that's also a very nice way of creating wealth, where you sell your other house, wherever it is, and you buy this ugly duckling in the right area, sit it out there while you're paying the mortgage. It's being subdivided in the background. In 18 months, you can go and decide to sell, break it, sell it as a wholesale. You go into an option of selling a wholesale development, where you're selling the land at wholesale price, to say, I've got 7 stands of 300 square meters. Which developer wants to come and take it? Or you go and you sell a piecemeal. It's up to you. But there's options of looking at that.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think so much insight, so much to take away from, and I think we are going to try and explore a little bit more, particularly when we get into the interactive session. But I want you to. We have had a few challenges during this this program in terms of technology, but I think the principles that you are sharing are incredible. I think there's one thing that you talked about that you did not, that I want you to zero in, because it's a part of proper development that many people with a smaller budget can start with. I think you're talking about flipping. Can we talk into a little bit more to say, what is flipping? What does it entail? What are you seeing? And what can you do? So, because somebody may say, look, I can't go buy a freestanding land that's, I mean, that's massive to be able to bank it or to do things, but at least I can start somewhere. And I think the thing of flipping that you talked about, can we go into a little bit more detail, just explain how it works, where you started, what you look for?
Yeah. So like Shami said, on the flipping side, if you want to go into the flipping space, you must do it very quick. You hit it hard. Your financing must be in place, right? Your whole project, your design of that house, it's basically your costing needs to be done properly. Let's start there. So you want to go with an appetite of a budget, knowing how much you want to spend for the flip, total amount of project. Then in there, you want to go now and negotiate find the ugly duckling within that budget. Because if you turn it upside down and just go and buy, then look for funds to develop or improve on it, you're going to have a problem. So the whole idea is you don't want to hold on to that property for too long. So ideally, you want to go in with the budget. The numbers must happen first and foremost. That will then guide where you should be going, because flipping opportunities are everywhere. They are not location specific. In any area, there will be an ugly duckling that has an opportunity. I mean, we've been looking, I was in Cosmo the other day, Cosmo City. There's so many opportunities I saw there, where there's an ugly duckling in the middle of nice homes that's probably costing a nominal 900. Those opportunities I find. So flipping does not necessarily have to be in an expensive area. A lower or middle class, middle income area could work for flipping and grow from there. It doesn't have to be Santon. Deep Sleuth, you could flip in Deep Sleuth, you could flip in Cosmo and still come out with the same thing.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's beautiful. Now, I have just a few moments. Would you each one want to just share 2 key principles or key insights that you want to share with our viewers?
For me, I think property is for everyone. There's a price point and there's a budget that can meet most people. And I was with my banker this last week, and she was saying that actually creating um, new homeowners earning 5,000 Rand a month, they're able to afford homes. It's about being lean and disciplined around your budget. You can be a homeowner. You can find a home in a price point in that particular bracket. So it's not a thing for the rich and famous. So I need to earn 15,000 plus to be a homeowner. From 5,000, 6,000 Rand, you can find property. It's about spending the time to actually sort out your budget and speaking to agents and speaking to people who maybe know something in that market that you may not know. I think we say property development, it's a big buzzword. It sounds scary, but people can own homes on very, very little budget. And you don't have to stay in that home for you to say you're a homeowner. You can buy a property, you can let it out if you feel you're not ready to move in. And already it's appreciating value, you're creating wealth, and it's most likely able to pay for itself without you being in there. So you can start owning property while you rent and ultimately move into your own property later on. It is not an impossible task. It can be done.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Paul?
Doc, I still say to the running motto, run your pace, enjoy your race. I think for anybody to get into this space, that for me, other than the location, it's very important we pace ourselves for this. There are lots of highs and lows in this space. Emotionally, there can be moments where things are not good. Like I say, there's emotional highs and lows. So I think the more we pace ourselves, there is something for someone out there. To Shami's point, so long you find the niche point, don't go and look in Sentin, look in Cosmo, in Deep Sleuth. There is something out there for everybody. It's about finding what makes sense for you and what works for your budget.
Thank you so much, guys. I think this has been really powerful and exciting. I hope that the people who have been part of this broadcast, you have benefited a lot, and we are going to try and create an opportunity. Actually, we have an opportunity right here to go into our Zoom session where it's interactive, and we are going to, right now the link is being posted, and you can join us and we can take this further. I think Paul and Shami, as you can see, they have a wealth of experience. There's so much insight, so much learning, but there's so much we can do within an hour. But they have really whetted our appetite. For those who want to know a little bit more, join us for just 45 minutes in the Zoom session, and then we will try to dig deeper. And if you have any questions, any insights that you want to draw from them, you can draw from there. Let's encourage each other and help each other. But I want you to understand, I think it was Paul who said that property development or property investment is for everyone. Property development is one of those critical things that you can do easily, but you need, one of the things you have to invest in is to invest in knowledge. Before you invest your money, invest in knowledge. Get to know what it is. You see, if you just go in because others are going in, you are going to sink your money and you are going to destroy your family. So it's important to invest in knowledge, attend seminars. I think I like what Paul says. Paul says you need to drive, don't just do desktop research. Drive, see things, relate with people, talk to people. I mean, be a person who goes out and is reaching out and learning. As you learn, as you do, then you invest your money. And so that is very important. I think this has been great. Thank you, Shami. Thank you, Paul. You have been really, you are inspirational. You guys, you made a difference in investing in us. We thank you and we say, God bless you. So folks, let's meet again in just a moment in the Zoom interactive session. For those who are off-boarding right now, we want you to know that we will meet again next month at about the same time, right here at Victory Business Forum for Celebration Church Johannesburg. Thank you so much. One more time, thank you, Paul and Shami, for being our coaches today.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you for having us.